We continue to see things shifting in the restaurant industry almost on a day in and day out basis. A lot of what we're seeing is coming to us from things like state mandates to shifts in how restaurant operators are actually changing their very business model. And today we're going to kind of explore that a little deeper. My name is Paul Barron, and this is the Barron Report. All right, so adapting in this new era of the restaurant age is really kind of the topic for today. And I thought, let's get someone on that's kind of done this. They've built brands, they've worked in the culinary field, they've created concepts. And no better person would be Aaron Noveshen, who is out of the culinary group in San Francisco. Great to have you on. Also, there at Culinary Edge, but also the founder of Starbird Chicken. So awesome to see you there.
Great to see you too, Paul. Always great to be on your show.
Yes, excellent. Aaron, so let's kind of get into, well, first of all, I want to make sure our audience, because sometimes here on the Barron Report, Starbird Chicken, a prominent fast casual chain that has kind of came out of nowhere. You guys have really done a great job with both branding and growth. Talk to me a little bit about both the Culinary Edge and TCE Ventures and Starbird and how you guys are moving forward here right now.
Sure. Just to get a little background, I was the founder and am the founder of the Culinary Edge. We're a food and beverage innovation agency based in San Francisco, California. We work to create great food experiences, primarily for restaurant companies, but also for other food industry companies. We incubated Starbird Chicken about 4 years ago and launched our first Starbird in Silicon Valley. We just opened our 7th restaurant. We opened a restaurant last week, and we feel really excited to be able to be opening restaurants and growing in a time like this. And our restaurants we've got 4 street side restaurants, 1 cloud kitchen, a licensing restaurant in SFO, and also a restaurant in Levi's Stadium.
Very cool. I like it. So was the new restaurant that you opened, was it there in California?
Yeah, so we opened in Campbell, California, in a place called the Prune Yard Shopping Center. And It's a smaller space. It's about 1,750 square feet. And we had a stellar first weekend. We actually had a $10,000 day, if you can imagine that, in 1,700 square feet with no dining rooms opened. And our marketing team has done a tremendous job in the launch, and the operating team to be able to stay up or stay in step with the consumer demand. The digital platform that we've created has really made a huge difference in terms of reaching consumers today, whether it be our social or our outreach through our native app. It's really about the digital connectivity that is driving the continued interest and excitement to try out a new Starbird restaurant.
Yeah, very cool. I want to kind of go in the direction of the Culinary Edge for just a moment, because typically what we see here, at least on Foodable, is trends usually start at the consultative level, where brands are seeking guys like yourself and the Culinary Edge to kind of give them a direction for things that are to come. And I'm kind of curious, within your practice, are you seeing anything specific that you're like, hey, this is something that is really starting to lean into the wind in terms of trends in the next couple of years? What are you seeing there?
Sure. And we've been very fortunate to work with both large full-service brands, top 10 convenience brands that are in the country right now have come to us to help support them in their initiatives. What we're seeing a lot of in the full-service side is really having a much greater approach to off-premise, obviously with dining rooms closing and having limited ability to serve people inside the dining room, having a strong strategy for off-premise, digital means for which to connect with those brands. And one of the things that's really important when we're working with companies, particularly full-service brands or legacy brands, is people are looking for those tried and true items. And so we've been working a bit on menu consolidation and really leaning into the items that really define what a brand is all about. And so not that innovation and new items are not important to create excitement and give people things to talk about, but also really leaning into the things that create comfort and nostalgia and a sense of security and calm as they relate to restaurants.
Yeah, I think, yeah, with the idea of focusing, and I love what you just said in terms of especially focusing on what you're good at, that usually is the differentiator in most restaurants anyway, so it's kind of that kind of characteristic. And I think for what we're seeing, at least today, the simplicity side of it makes it for a much better operation when you're trying to do a lot more takeout or, off-premise. Which kind of brings me into this next topic, and that is when you look at, and I had not realized that Starbird had opened a ghost operation, so that's interesting that you had kind of gone there. I want to jump into that, but before we get
Sure.
there, when you look at other brands that are out there developing kind of their framework, as you mentioned, digital platform, whether it's a native app or really going after it on social and maybe even on web with e-commerce, when you look at all of these things moving and shifting to digital, what is your concern, if any, in terms of the experience and potentially the unit economics when it comes to real estate and kind of design and all those kinds of things that have to factor into building new restaurants? Would you say, hey, let's pull the trigger on a completely new prototype design and look toward the future with 60, 70, 80+% off-premise and a lot less on dining? Or do you feel like, hey, no, let's still continue to go the in-store dining route?
I think that every brand is different, of course. And no matter what, there's going to be more off-premise, right? And so
Yep.
fundamentally, whether you can't take away, many brands have 500 restaurants. So
Right.
any new prototypes, or so they open 20 or 30 restaurants in the next 1 or 2 years, is still not going to make a dent in the big bulk of the operations they have today.
Right,
So
right.
while restaurants have to look to the future, they have to look at their core assets that they have today and how to best leverage those assets. So ensuring that consumers can interface with the existing restaurants in a completely frictionless way is really critical. And that takes a lot of different forms. It could be starting with, first and foremost, can they order from you digitally? Most restaurants have a digital way to order from them. What does the third-party delivery access look like? How does photography look in that space? You got to think about the entire journey of the consumer's interaction with the brand. So there's anticipation. What do I want to eat tonight? How do I find you? Do I do a search in Google? Do I look at third party? Do I entrust the couple of apps I might have natively on my mobile device? And then from there, you have to ensure that the photography is good, the message is clear, the navigability is awesome, and the ability for people to order food from you, right? Whether it is to pick up on site or to have delivered, you have to take every single step of the journey into consideration. Then comes packaging, branding, touch points. Does your telephone system work? We basically installed additional telephone lines in our restaurant because there's this uncertainty, or you don't have a chance if you make a mistake for someone to turn around and say, "Hey, this is wrong. Can you fix it?" When it's brought home with them or been delivered to them, usually they want to pick up a phone to contact you, and so you need to be able to address or deal with those kind of issues as they arise.
Yeah, interesting. And I think you're right when you look at that, because unit economics, as you mentioned, when you look at brands that are, whether it's 500 units, 100 units, those are pretty much kind of set in stone. In many cases, they can't, or they're not in a position to look at restructuring an entire format of the footprint. But as you look toward, let's say, smaller brands that might be in that kind of that quasi not sure which direction I'm going to go, whether I was going to develop new restaurants in urban cities, maybe go the virtual or ghost kitchen. If I had a choice and I was only at half a dozen units, where I could start to roadmap out my brand. I just had a chance to see the KFC redesign, and I was kind of curious. They didn't go all in on off-premise, but it was a pretty heavy leaning forward to off-premise dining. and that obviously being one of the largest QSR chains out there. Do you feel like a smaller brand would just go ahead and maybe look in that direction, or do you feel like it still is an option? I guess the question I'm trying to get answered is it worthy of still building restaurants with dine-in operations, especially in fast food and QSR and fast casual?
So at Starbird, I mean, most of those drive-through legacy brands are already doing 70% through their drive-through, right? So
anyway,
it's a pretty small shift. And I think the rise of DTO, delivery takeout, is going to happen a lot. We see a lot of exploration into that space, those 800 to 1,200 square foot spots where a person can pick up food quickly and easily that they order ahead is a real benefit. And while you still get some branding and street side presence to have a billboard for your company versus the hidden nature of a ghost kitchen. For Starbird is probably a good example of a half dozen plus type of brand. Our strategy right now is multifaceted. We call it our omni-channel strategy. We're looking at doing street side restaurants more so in suburban or high traffic areas where there's a lot of ease of delivery and or access or parking.
Right.
And then in the urban locations, we have a ghost kitchen in San Francisco. We're also opening another ghost kitchen in Oakland, California next week. So we are still bullish on high density delivery and pickup. And then another growth vehicle for us is really looking at franchising. So starting in 2021, Starbird will be franchising, and we'll be looking for some big franchise partners, experienced folks there. We've decided to turn that on. We tested it out with licensing in our airport location, and we realized that sticking with an asset light approach to growth, franchising is a terrific vehicle for that. So we're excited about turning that on. We've also signed our first ghost kitchen location in Los Angeles. So we'll be expanding to Southern California in the fall.
Wow, so that's a quick acceleration on ghost kitchens with San Francisco, Oakland, and now LA. I mean, that's almost half your population of stores right now.
Yeah, and so the way that we think about ghost kitchens, it's a balanced strategy, right? So the ghost kitchen economic model is completely different than the traditional restaurant model.
For sure.
And I think that we talked about coining the new P&L, which used to have prime costs, which were food and labor costs. Now there is really a line item we're calling, or I've sort of coined recently, it's prime cost plus delivery. And plus delivery it's an absolute now. And if you're in a ghost kitchen environment, that delivery line is literally going to be somewhere from 15 to 25% of total sales, unless you have a tremendous amount of catering. And so your economic model is literally on its head, right? So when you think about 60% prime cost being a model, right now the new model is really about probably 60 to 65% prime cost plus delivery, which means that you're going to have to drive down your prime cost closer to the traditional prime cost in the lower 50s to be able to compete in this new environment. So we're bullish on it. One of the ways that we've been able to take advantage of the function, having a ghost kitchen function is really through our virtual brand development. So happy to share a little bit about that if it fits into this conversation.
No, I want to continue on down there because there's so many unit economic impacts that you just mentioned. And I think a lot of operators now, at least the ones that come on this show, they've talked about, the delivery aspect, especially from the marketplaces, as becoming kind of the new marketing vehicle, which if you think about it, if you're shifting your marketing dollars away from traditional marketing spend and you look at, hey, I'm just going to absorb that in my delivery cost as my new marketing spend, so to speak, it does start to shift the dynamics of how a unit economic and especially a P&L starts coming together for a restaurant. Talk to me about virtual brand, because we have talked with a few companies who have developed them. Some are very successful, some are kind of just out there not really moving quickly, but they've kind of established. Where do you guys stand on this?
We're extremely bullish on virtual brands. We at Starbird have developed 4 different virtual brands.
Awesome.
And so those are, first and foremost, we developed Starbird Wings, which we actually launched almost a year ago today. Our second virtual brand is Starbird Salads. Last week, we launched Starbird Bowls. It's in tests in one of our locations in San Jose. And we have a fourth virtual brand called Garden Bird, which is our plant-based protein brand.
Okay.
The approach we took to virtual brands was there's sort of two ways you can go about it. One is you can say, all right, we're going to create a house of brands, which are completely disparate brands that no one necessarily knows that they are related to each other at all. The other approach is to have a branded house, which is this overarching sort of North Star, which is the Starbird brand ID or brand ethos that sits over all of our sub brands. And our focus is much more targeted to, so let's say Starbird Salads, very much a targeted brand to someone who's looking for a better for you option. It allows us to have the virtual real estate where people are looking on third-party delivery sites and saying, hey, where do I get a salad? What's the best salad? We have an incredible concentration on tremendously high quality food photography. So when you're scrolling down a third-party delivery site looking at salad options, Starbird salads really jump out. You know, we're super premium fast food. If you saw Starbird salads, you're like, this is one of the best looking salads I'm seeing in all of the third-party delivery site. And we actually are doing a tremendous amount of volume in our virtual brands. Our Ghost Kitchen in San Francisco actually does more sales from a combination of wings and salads than we do in our core Starbird brand. And with the addition of Bowls and Garden Bird, we really see this package deal of 5 fully integrated brands that work on an operational platform that is seamless. Like to add Bowls, we added 3 new ingredients, right? Yeah. And a grain. And we're able to launch 7 new bowls in that concept, right? So the Culinary Edge has deep expertise in engineering concepts. And when I talk about engineering, it's A, what is the offering, right, that is compelling and exciting and craveable for the consumer? And then what is the operating platform on the back end that can allow for this execution to happen seamlessly, profitably, and allow for, you think about operating 5 disparate brands, you know, I don't want to touch it, right? We want things that the crossover of items and ingredients is really done seamlessly. And so that's part of what we focus on at the Culinary Edge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people don't give that really credit, and it's in reality, it's probably going to be looked at, you know, years to come in a Harvard marketing class on how brands diversified in, especially during this era, where if you think about it, you know, somebody that might assume, okay, I'm Starbird Chicken, I'm going in here, but a vegan might say, well, that's, you know, that restaurant's out for me, versus going the direction you guys are talking about, which is to have that offering that still gives that diversity across the entire menu landscape, which I think is a brilliant way to go. I'm just surprised that we haven't figured this out as an industry earlier than now, which is kind of fun to watch as more companies get into it.
It really is a new frontier. And so the nice thing is that here at the Culinary Edge, we have a tremendous team who is thinking about ways to connect to the consumer, and Starbird becomes a bit of a lab for us. So when Cloud Kitchen came to San Francisco and said, oh, we're going to open up a facility, amazingly, they opened up in the alley right across from our headquarters. You could walk out the front door, throw a baseball, and get our Cloud Kitchen. So we said, wow, this is quite fortuitous. And so we opened up Starbird Kitchen across the street, and we just are constantly testing and trying things in that facility to learn what resonates. In this virtual world, you can test things. You can flip a switch on and off much more easily than you can do in a brick and mortar restaurant, because the ramp up and ramp down, it's like you can't test something and then say like, okay, well, all those people who walk up to your door, sorry, we were testing that, you know, they're knocking on your door. Whereas in a ghost kitchen environment, you have a lot more flexibility and a lot more rapid rapid opportunity, I should say, to test things out and try things differently.
Yeah, for sure. Aaron, when you look at kind of the shift that we've seen here, especially in consumer habits around dining in, but also mostly on the off-premises side, meaning delivery and takeout. When you look at that, where we are today, end of 2020, and where we could be in the next, say, quarter to 2 quarters, do you feel like the industry is going to see a bounce back, or do you feel like we still have a long way to go yet before we start to see in some normalcy?
I think everything really does depend on the vaccine at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's what a vaccine does is it allows security and safety for consumers to feel comfortable enough to walk outside and go into a restaurant, and also for the jurisdictions and administrations and governmental authorities to allow for it. And so the rapid deployment of a vaccine is so critically important to the success of restaurants in the future. Right now, I think we're headed in a direction of locking down more than opening up. Los Angeles even shut down outdoor dining. I think it was over the last 24, 48 hours. And that's going to really, really impact full service restaurants who've been able to, Los Angeles, you can still eat outside. It's not that cold there. A couple of stand-up heaters on a patio and you're good to go outside. Removing that from that environment is really going to hurt independent restaurants tremendously there. And I think a lot of them have not necessarily gone full force into off-premise because it really doesn't fit what they do well. But, it's going to Q1. It's still cold in most of the country, and it's winter till the end of February, and it really is going to be until March where it starts to warm up again. It's going to be a pretty cold winter still. I think the restaurant industry is going to continue to have its challenges. Hoping that the government will step in and support our industry. It's much needed. There's a lot, second highest employer in the country is the restaurant industry. And we really need the government to help step up and support those businesses. The first round really helped, but a lot of that's running out right now. And the independent restaurants are really the ones that are hurting the most.
Yeah, we get a chance to talk to a lot of independent operators, and the numbers that we're drawing in from Foodable Labs, I can't even fathom it. I remember when we looked at this last March and April, and we were trying to essentially put a number on this through some extrapolation of data that was coming in. Independent was by far the #1 area that was getting hit in terms of closures, in terms of job loss, from obvious layoffs and things of that nature as we move forward. And it's only gotten worse. So it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of shakes out as we move not only into next year. Obviously, we've got a new administration coming in. That in itself for deployment, how quickly we can deploy the vaccination. And really, to a certain extent, how many people will take it. Because that's going to start to play into all of this, which is still going to create what I fear is a concern for people going out and dining out. And I guess that's the biggest concern I have for all of 2021. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard for me to understand the anti-vax movement. I don't want to, it just doesn't make sense to me. And it was great to see the results of the Pfizer study and the other studies that have happened for the initial results of these vaccines, and where positive cases occurred or positive cases didn't occur. And it, to me, the science is pretty resounding. There's risk in everything. There's risk in going out and not having the vaccine. There's risk in taking a vaccine, right?
Sure.
And so everyone has their own place where they fall on their comfort of what is right for them. For our industry, though, it's going to be a lifesaver in more ways than one. It's going to be a business saver. It's going to be a lifesaver. It's going to also help our team members. They're on the front lines every day. Yeah, definitely. And we closed our dining rooms at Starbird on March 16th, I think it was. We were one of the first, maybe even a little bit before then, and have not opened them up since. The new restaurant we opened the other day, we decided to not open the dining room. Our team resoundingly said we've got to support our team members and keep them as safe as possible and keep our guests as safe as possible, and create an experience where people say, okay, this place is buttoned up and it's a safe place to dine, and they're taking care of their people, and it seems to work. It's attracting a lot of folks to utilize Starbird. And so I'd like to continue to see our government and the pharmaceutical companies really lean into getting a vaccine out to frontline workers and to restaurant workers and retail workers, those who are serving the public every single day. It's just so important to, we want to really jumpstart the economy. That's the way to jumpstart the economy.
Yeah, for sure. One last question for you, and that is, and I'm trying to kind of get a collection of opinions and thoughts on this in terms of third-party delivery. So I'm hearing both arguments. Third-party delivery could be the savior because of the off-premise and delivery takeout, but also at the same time kind of a Trojan horse of companies getting so dependent on it that they can never really break away and develop single-party or first-party delivery. What are your thoughts on that as we move forward in the next few years? Do you think third-party is still going to hold on, or do you feel like companies are going to develop their own business around delivery?
My gut says that third party's here to stay, and the logistics that third party delivery companies offer in terms of having available drivers that literally someone could be 30 seconds away and they could pick up there's no way to match the efficiency of that. The cost of it is still challenging, right? And my gut says that the cost of food is just going to go up, because the cost of delivery, the real cost of delivery is higher than what people are paying for it today.
For sure.
And so what's happening is the competitive nature of the third-party delivery sites are artificially discounting the cost of delivery, right? And so the consumer is thinking that, oh, well, it only costs this much to do it, and they're all just trying to grab market share, which is pretty typical in tech-based businesses. Over time, that will start to normalize, right? And I don't think it's going away. I think what will change the most is the ownership of the data and ownership of the customer. We're working very hard, and we were partnering with DoorDash to as part of their Drive product to own as much of the customer relationship as we can. And I work on an advisory committee to DoorDash, and I would say that they're really looking to understand the needs of the restaurants, right? And they've created a forum for restaurateurs to share the needs and what really matters to them. They've got to make money. They have a growing business, so that I understand that also. And all these businesses, I think Uber Eats lost, I don't know how many billions of dollars in the last year. It's going to take time. They know that if the restaurants can't succeed using their service, then their service will not succeed. So they know that they've got to make that work too. So it's a fine balance, but I think the intention is won by those companies to figure out a way to create a win-win.
Yeah, I think you hit on it, and that is, if you look at the profitability of any of these delivery companies, especially Uber, I'm still amazed at how much money they can lose on a quarterly basis, still maintain their investments from SoftBank and public trust, and especially around stock price. But at the same time, they're going to have to kind of hold the line in terms of pricing. But I do agree with you, and when I say pricing to the restaurant for delivery. But I do agree with you. I think control of that data is a negotiable that eventually is going to have to come over to the restaurant's side, because you're right. You've got to keep control all the way through in terms of your customer, because that's really who it is. It's your customer. So I'm definitely in agreement with you there. Aaron, it's always great chatting with you. I love to get your insights. We definitely want to keep you on our quick dial for industry updates as things start to change for next year. So I'm going to be watching your ghost and virtual brand operations very closely. It sounds like you're onto something.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. It's been great to be speaking with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you for stopping in. All right, so all of you listening and over on, maybe you're on the podcast app and you're listening in on Spotify or iTunes, make sure and drop us a note. It is where we get all of our great feedback, and it's also where we kind of learn what you guys want to listen to or hear on the Barron Report. And of course, if you're over on YouTube, make sure and subscribe, hit the notification bell, because that's the way you're going to get new content here from Foodable Network. And if you have a great idea for a show, shoot us an email to producer@foodabletv.com and or hit me up on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on the Barron Report.